Hello, friends. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Jael Explains It All. Tonight, I have something very important to share with you because humanity is facing one of the most challenging threats in its history. A threat so concerning that it forces you to think of whether or not this time we're going to make it as a species. And I am not talking about wars here, or famine, or the environmental crisis. I am not talking about solar flares or alien invading us. No, I am talking about something much more complicated. I'm talking about a big, fat, red self-destruct button and humanity's metaphorical finger hovering over it through the refusal to reproduce. This is a video about the birth rate crisis. All right, so what is the birth rate crisis? Basically, children are not being born. Nobody knows exactly why this is or how to fix it, but the truth is we're far, far, far away from replacement level. Now, several people have suggested paths to try and tackle this challenge. And some of them have even been implemented, like famously South Korea, which is the country with the lowest birth rate in the entire world, has tried to fix this over the past few years. And they did so many different things. They gave couples a stipend, basically a bribe, like a financial bribe, to get them to reproduce. They gave them housing, like social housing, socialized housing, so they don't have to worry about affording a house. They are building new preschools and nurseries left and right, and they even created a program of subsidized domestic help for them so that they are not overwhelmed by household chores. But let me tell you one thing. It's not working. South Korea is still in the depths of the abyss of the birth rate, and they show no sign of recovery. So, what is going on? What can we do to fix this? I have a few ideas, and I am not an expert, and I don't have a PhD, but, I am someone who likes to think things through, and I am going to give it my best shot. So before I do that, I want us to be on the same page on this. I want you to understand all the little terms, the terminology, and also to understand the problem so that we can then think about potential solutions. Now, the first thing that we have to understand here is what the birth rate actually is, the little number, the birth rate number, what it is. Basically, it is a number that shows the number of children women are having on average on a specific population. So, for example, if the birth rate is 2.6, that means women are having 2.6 children each. Now, obviously, a woman cannot have 2.6 children. She can have 2 children or 3 children. She cannot have 2.6, but it's an average. It's an average. So this number is very important because there is a minimum number that you have to abide by if you don't want your population to decrease or decline. So if you want to maintain your population at the exact same level, not grow your population, but also not decline, you would need to replace each and every person living with another human being, right? And for a couple, that means a couple needs to have 2 children, one for the woman and one for the man. And this sounds like the replacement rate would be 2, right? If you have a birth rate of 2, that means women are having 2 children on average, and that means we can all be replaced and be happy. But that's not how it works. The actual replacement number is higher than that. It's 2.1, because not all children make it. Not all the children you're going to have are going to have children of their own. And so, in order to have the population effectively replaced, you need to have a replacement rate, a birth rate of 2.1, meaning most couples have 2 kids, and then there's a few couples out there who have 3. That way you can ensure that even if some freak accident happens to one of the kids, you can still rest assured that every single person is going to be replaced. Now, the problem here is obviously that not a single country in the developed world reaches 2.1. Every single country in the West, in Asia, in the Americas is below replacement level. And this is concerning because this means that the population is steadily or rapidly declining. Even China, who used to have such a big problem with its population that they implemented the one-child policy like 2 decades ago, even China is having issues now because they can't find enough people to want to reproduce to keep their population steady. So what is happening? Why are people simply not interested in reproducing? How did we get here? Just a couple of decades ago, like in the 1950s, we had women with 5, 6, 7 children. My grandma has 5 adult children, and I've met older women who have 12 kids. So how did we go from 5, 10, 8 children to 0? To 0, like not even 1, like 0. Many people nowadays are having a grand total of 0 kids. How did this happen? Well, I'm sure there's a multitude of reasons for this. These phenomenons tend to be like there's a diverse number of causes for this. It's not just a single cause. But I'm going to do my best to tackle like the biggest ones I can think of. Now, the first one is a mindset issue. If you're, for example, a citizen of the country named Reddit, you are probably applauding the fact that people can be child-free, and that is no longer frowned upon by the rest of the population. There are subreddits dedicated to people congratulating each other for having a child-free life. Over at TikTok, we have the figure of the dinks, the 2 adults, no children, 2-income families. And the reason people are applauding this is they don't really understand second-order effects. They don't really understand that if enough people forego children, then, by not having children, the population is halved in every single generation. And this puts them at risk of the Funko Pop factories closing. Everything they love and cherish is going to go extinct along with humanity. This is something that I don't think they managed to understand very easily. Literally every single thing in civilization depends on people. So the number one, the key resource in humanity is people. If the production of people is halted, so is the production of literally everything else. So it's basically the child-free mentality is basically a weapon, one of the most effective weapons against humanity itself. Now, I want to explain to you this thing of the danger within the birth rate that we're seeing today. Because on paper, it just looks like numbers. When I tell you that most countries in the Western world, are struggling to even get to 2, and they're all hovering over a birth rate of 1, on paper, it just seems unimportant. You think like, well, okay, it's not 0, Some people are having children. They're just having 1 instead of 2. It's not that bad. But it is bad. It is actually terrible because what that means is this is an exponential problem. Because in each generation, we're having half the people. Like we're halving the people in each generation. So if you have, say, an ant farm, and you have 100 ants, and you half the population in each generation, the first generation, you go from 100 to 50. The second generation, you go from 50 to 25. And the third generation, you go to 13, and then 6, and then 3, and then you have no farm. So how did we get here? Just a few decades ago in the 50s, we had things like the Brady Bunch in TV. Women had 5, 6, 7 children. I know an old lady who had 12 children. 12 children. Okay? How did we go from 12, 10, 8, 5 children to 0, to literally 0? How did this happen? Now, I'm sure there's a multitude of explanations and factors that will justify the decline. And I'm pretty sure someone with a very big magnifying glass can go into very good detail on this. But I'm going to tell you the ones I see. And I'm also going to tell you like the reasons each group blames this on. So, for example, if you are a citizen of a country named Reddit, you are probably applauding the fact that you can choose to be child-free now and none of your rights become compromised because of that. You get exactly the same tax cuts and whatever than someone who does choose to have children, because you, as a Redditor, do not understand second-order effects. You don't understand that by choosing to forego children, if enough people choose to forego childbearing, caring, and rearing, the entirety of humanity is put at risk. And your generation is going to see the numbers half. The number of people is going to halve in each generation. And that's a very fast decline. And in fact, this could put in danger almost everything that you love about this world. By foregoing children, for example, you risk the Funko Pop factory closing. They just couldn't find enough employees to man the machines to make your Funko Pops, you know? And this happens with everything because the main resource of civilization is actually people. If you don't produce enough people, then you can't produce anything else. If you hold to the production of humans, obviously, the production of everything else is going to be compromised. And that's something that people on Reddit don't understand. But then on the other hand, you have the trads. And, the trads like to blame the child-free attitudes on comfort seeking. Like they think people are too soft, too bland, they are too used to being comfortable. They don't want to compromise their couch, their TV shows, their traveling, their hookup culture. They don't want to have to give up any of these things in order to have children. They want to get drunk, hook up, travel, and enjoy life. And they just want to, they want to fuck around. And they are about to find out. But here's the problem. I think humanity has loved to fuck around for millennia, and we're still here. People fucked around, got drunk, hired prostitutes, and did all kinds of things for thousands of years, and women were still bearing 5 to 10 children a pop. So I don't think fucking around is a good enough explanation for this heavy decline. Then we have people with tinfoil hats. Okay, we have people with tinfoil hats who like to blame this on George Soros and the fact that they have polluted the entirety of the media consumption for the whole of humanity. They present motherhood as something terrible, as something shameful, as something that should be avoided at all cost. And they have a point, because I am old enough that I remember Sex and the City. I remember the first episode of Sex and the City where they actually go to a baby shower. And each and every one of them, except for Charlotte, explains in detail why having children is like the worst outcome they could think of for themselves. And when Charlotte said that she wanted to have children, she got laughed at by the rest of them. And we have been on a steady diet of this type of content for decades now. And yeah, there is something to be said about the capacity that media has to set expectations on people. Like, what you see on TV is what you automatically think is normal and acceptable and good. And in that way, we kind of mirror what we see on TV. So the people who were promoting this type of content were really basically evil, in my opinion. But, I don't think if we could magically censor this type of content, and because humanity's future is at stake, if I could have like a magic wand and go like swoosh swoosh, from now on all TV shows are going to present motherhood as something wonderful, I don't think that's enough to turn things around. I don't think that's the only reason, and I don't think changing this is enough at the moment to make an effective change. So governments and NGOs blame this on a lack of resources. They claim this is happening because people don't have money. And if you don't have enough money, then you cannot reproduce. You can't have children if you don't think you have the money to take care of them. And some people agree with this and give it a different angle. Like, some people say, well, it takes a village, Now we don't have the village. So now each couple has to take care of their children without any support or help or anything. And this is like a really big burden that they cannot, But, you have to understand that this is also not necessarily true. I mean, I remember the stories of my grandmothers, and they didn't have a village to raise the kids with. Their parents were in Europe, they didn't have an extended family because most of them were like war refugees, and they still had 5 kids. So I don't think this is entirely necessary in order to have children. Now, I have a different take on this, and I think my take is very smart. I haven't heard anybody else say this, so I think it's worth mentioning it. I don't think the birth crisis is about money. It's about what you see on TV. It's about not having a village. It's about rights or about comfort. I think the crisis is about prestige. As simple as that. It is about prestige. We see people do crazy things for prestige, and they avoid very pleasurable things for the same prestige. I mean, I have seen people around me do all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, getting a mortgage nowadays seems to me like a crazy venture. Not only is like the interest rates and all of the insanity, but the tax hikes. It's crazy to buy a house, and yet most people will do it. They will jump right into it because of prestige, because being a homeowner is still a prestigious thing. It's because of the ego that goes along with it. And until we don't get this hammered into our brains, we're not going to be able to fix this. Becoming a doctor, for example, is very hard. It's the opposite of fucking around. You have to study very hard for 15 years. You have to sweat, bleed, and cry. You go into crippling debt. It's not reasonable. So why do people do it when it would be much more comfortable to just park your ass on your couch and watch TV all day? Why would you do this when you have to go in debt in order to do it? Why do you do this when it's 15 years of your life that you're putting on the line here? Simple, because of prestige. We give doctors a white coat. We make them walk around with a stupid stethoscope that they don't even need to use like at all around their neck, and a little name tag with the initials, like the letters MD before their names, and they feel really special. They feel like they have a purpose, a place on this planet. They feel like other people respect and admire them, and they do. So what do people do? They go into debt, they stop fucking around, and they study, they sweat, bleed, and cry for 15 years just to get the MD before their names. People sign up in troves, is what I'm trying to say. So, what about motherhood? Motherhood is hard. You have to give birth. You have to squeeze something the size of a football through a hole that is not very big, okay? It hurts. It hurts. And you have to pay the hospital for this. And there's complications. There's 9 months of you literally feeling sick every single day. And then you have a baby that requires 100% of your attention. Permanent lack of sleep for the foreseeable future. Do you get a white coat? No. No, you don't get a white coat. Do you get to hang some fun thing around your neck? No. Do you get any sort of title before your name? No. Do you get the respect of your peers, the admiration of the people around you? No. Do you get any sort of preferential treatment anywhere? Well, you used to, but not anymore because child-free groups can lobby now. You get lumped in. Once you get pregnant, you get the opposite. You get shame and you get people pointing the finger at you in a negative way. You go from being a respectable citizen to occupy the bottom rung of the social ladder instantly. For example, you get lumped in with the sick and the elderly. Whenever you go somewhere, like you go to the subway and there's a preferential seat, the sticker reads elderly, cripples, and pregnant women. You are suddenly a burden on society. If you have a pram that you have to push around because you have a baby and you have to use public transportation, let me tell you, it is a nightmare. There's not enough elevators or ramps to move around, and this complicates your daily commute by a magnitude of thousands. You get people, you do your best to try and keep your children well-behaved, but they're children, so they're noisy and messy, and sometimes someone throws a tantrum. And what you get is, when a mother brings their children into the public spaces, what they get if their child is being difficult is not the understanding of the people around them. You get a bunch of child-free folk with their phones pointed at the woman, recording her for all the internet to see. And then she gets posted on the internet and everybody shits on her in the comments. Homosexuals call them reproducers. Restaurants ban people now if they have children. You can't discriminate against any groups of people. If you're a restaurant, you cannot put a sign that reads, "No Negroes allowed." Like we were in the segregation era. They can't put up a sign that reads, "No elderly allowed in this restaurant." That would be discriminatory. You can't say that you don't allow, Latinos in. But you can say that children are forbidden. You can discriminate against children because they have no legal representation. And they do. There's tons of restaurants that will not allow a couple to sit down for a meal if they are a family. They do serve dog food, though. They do have a doggy menu available, for your little pooch. Just don't bring children here, please. This does not get solved by throwing money at couples. If you see yourself demoted from respectable person to a humiliating spot in the social ladder, this is not going to get fixed because you give me a stipend of $5,000. It's not going to be fixed because the government sent me a crib for the baby. It's not going to be fixed because I get socialized housing. How humiliating to be on welfare. That's not how you fix this, you understand? That is not how you fix this. You fix this by fixing the image of motherhood and families within society. And part of the reason that we got here is that this is a self-reinforcing pattern. If you use game theory, you realize soon that there are actually two very distinct groups in society. You have group A, let's call it A, right? A group doesn't have children. They are child-free, dinks, they use Reddit, and they collect Funko Pops. And they do not like children. Like, they don't have children, and they also do not want other people's children to spoil their experience of life. So whenever they choose somewhere to go to, they take into account whether or not children are allowed in it. Sometimes, if children are allowed, they will skip this experience altogether. And then you have group B, which is families. And families are exactly the opposite. Families will gravitate towards places where other families are going to, because if your child is the only one throwing a tantrum in a secluded space with a bunch of dinks, you feel very embarrassed. It's very humiliating. People are going to give you the stink eye. But if you are in a family setting where children are expected and there's many other families, then your child is just one more child throwing a tantrum, and everybody around you has children, so they understand what you're going through. They're not going to post you online and humiliate you in front of the entire internet. So that's what starts to happen. What starts to happen is society starts to split into two: spaces that group A gravitates towards, where children are nowhere to be seen, and places where the group B gravitate towards. But what happens is, as a company, imagine you are a supermarket or a mall, or you have a store, whatever. You can cater to one of these two groups. Which one would you cater to? You have group B, group A, with no children, more disposable income, more willingness to spend because they don't have to buy shoes for 5 different children, and they don't need special facilities. They don't need a nursing room. They don't need special urinals in the bathroom for little boys. They don't need any of these things, and they spend a lot more. Or are you going to cater to the family crowd, which is loud, messy? You're probably going to have to hire more people to clean up. You're going to have to add a nursery room. You're going to have to add, maybe you're going to have to add a sink that is low enough for children to wash their little sticky hands in. And these families are not very much into spending because they have to buy clothes for 5 children. Which group are you going to cater to? If you want to maximize profit, the answer is right there. It's like staring at you in the face. You are going to cater to group A. You're going to cater to the dinks, the Redditors. You're going to have a very nice big Funko Pop store at the entrance of the mall. And you are probably going to applaud the fact that they're giving the families the stink eye. You want the families to go somewhere else so that your Redditors can shop at ease in your stores. And this is how society starts to polarize to one side or to the other. If we have a society that's polarized for children and families, then the attitudes that produce child-free couples start to get, the stink eye instead. They become the bottom rung of the social ladder. That is why that was the spot that used to be occupied by the aunt that never married. She used to be pitied by everybody, and people would whisper about her, nasty little comments about her in social settings. That's why the gay marriage was not an option, because you couldn't give the same rights to people who had no children than you would to people who were willing to go through the hard work that is to have a family. You couldn't have them on the same stature, You had to give families prestige. You had to give families the title of married couple. It had to mean something. It had to be prestigious, and you had to be willing to have children to participate in it. So society has been going from the pole of families to the pole of the child-free style for decades now. And in order to reverse this, I'm sorry, but the social rewards would have to shift dramatically. And this is not going to happen willingly on the part of the companies. This would have to be enforced by laws that make it so that having children and being a parent, being a family, is something, it's honorable. We used to call children the future. We used to have high regards for mothers. In the past, nobody would have humiliated a mom of 3 for being in the supermarket and having a baby cry. We need to go back to that. And unfortunately, it doesn't come without disrespect for the people who are not doing their part. All of these dinks, child-free types that are contributing to the decline of humanity, to the population collapse, they should have a social prestige hit for their choices. The fact that that doesn't happen is what has allowed the birth rate to be so low. So how do I envision a world where this is taken into account? I envision it very different from what we have right now. For example, instead of giving married couples a stipend for having children and bribing them with an insufficient bribe, I would use that money to create a wagon for the subway that is beautiful and luxurious and has tables for changing children and comfortable seating, maybe with upholstery, I don't know, that is exclusive for mothers with children. Everyone should want to ride the mom wagon. But you know what? You can't ride the mom wagon unless you have kids. I would make it extremely easy for moms to get their prams into said wagon. I would make it mandatory for every establishment to have a nursing room that is comfortable, with beautiful lighting, and perfectly adapted for women who are breastfeeding their children. They shouldn't have to do it in the bathroom, or they shouldn't have to pull their boob out in front of everybody if they don't want to. They have ramps for people in wheelchairs. This is mandatory. You cannot open any type of business with stairs and no ramps for people in wheelchairs. Nursery rooms should be mandatory and should be beautiful places that are beautifully decorated, that are very, very, very far from the bathroom. And I would give mothers a title. I would give mothers some sort of special title that goes in the passport that, signals that they are doing, they're building the world of tomorrow. They are the future. Their children are the future, and they are foregoing fucking around for doing this commendable work of having a family. All of these things need to change. We need to see motherhood and families in a different light if we're going to save humanity. I mean, I don't think the stakes are higher. I don't think there are higher stakes than this. And I don't know why nobody has taken the time to understand that you need to give mothers some sort of white coat and stenograph or whatever the name is for that thing that you listen to Hearts with, so that they feel good about themselves. And by the way, shows like Sex and the City, they should be banned from TV. Like they should disappear. Like anyone portraying motherhood as something shameful, humiliating, or disgusting or negative, that shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed. On the contrary, we should be seeing many more shows where mothers are happy and they have many children, because motherhood has its challenges, but it's also incredibly fulfilling. So this is what I think. I don't know what you think. I don't know if you have a different explanation. For sure, this is probably just my take. Nothing, it could be complemented by other takes, but that's what I think. And I hope you enjoy this. See you soon.